Damon Martin, MMA fighting here with Beneil Dariush. And Beneil, I just want to, your fight got announced. Obviously, it's a couple weeks away, but I just want to pat myself on the back for calling this. Because if you remember our last interview, we were talking about potential opponents. You mentioned Justin Gaethje. You mentioned a couple guys, and I said, you know what fight would be really awesome is you and Tony Ferguson. Now, I'm not saying it's all my doing. I'm just saying I feel like I called that shot.
I appreciate it. This is I was hoping for Charles, Chandler, or Tony, and in my opinion, Tony is one of the best lightweights of all time. So what an opportunity, man! I appreciate the extra boost for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Beneil, coming out of your last fight, I know you wanted a ranked opponent. I know you wanted a bigger named opponent. Somebody that would get you closer to a title shot. What was your reaction when you got the call and they said Tony Ferguson?
Honestly, I was shocked. Because I don't know. I kept expecting this, but it wasn't happening. I kept expecting for a big name, after Jakar, they said, oh, what a big fight. You're going to get a big name next. I said, okay. And then I got Scott and okay, let's go. We beat Scott and it was a good fight. So again, I expected a big name. And then they gave me Diego. And I know how tough Diego is. And I was like, dang, man, they're just, they're just taking their time with it. So I was, to be honest, I was shocked. I didn't think I was going to get I thought I was going to get someone at number 8 or number 7, something like that.
Yeah, and I know you had told me with the baby on the way, you were actually planning on taking a little bit more time off. So did the timing, was this did it kind of throw things off a little bit, or was it more, once you got the offer of Tony Ferguson, you're like, you know what, I'm going to take this fight?
So actually, the goal was to fight in May or even April, end of April, and after I have my baby, like, don't call me. I don't want to hear from you guys until December. Maybe I'll fight in December. And that's earliest, maybe even after that. I want to spend some time with my baby and just be a dad.
Absolutely. So, we talked after your last performance, Beneil. You've been on such an incredible run right now, and I'm not going to make you rehash everything you said the last time around, but it feels like right now you are really hitting your stride, both in your striking and your grappling and where you want to be in terms of the title hunt. Kind of give me an idea, like how you're feeling now with this opportunity here, because this is what you've been waiting for. This is what you've been building towards. And I know you're not going to allow the pressure to get to you, but in terms of just your anticipation, like your preparation, like kind of give me an idea, like how you're feeling now with this. Again, this is kind of that opportunity to put you where you want to, where I imagine you're one fight away from a title shot or a title shot after this one.
Yeah. I don't know title shot, but, this is my mindset right now. I get to fight one of the scariest, one of the greatest lightweights of all time, and I'm genuinely happy about it. I can't wait. Like, just thinking about the fight makes me smile. Like, I'm gonna go in there, and it's gonna be a war. And I know Tony, and I think we're gonna see the best Tony. So, man, I'm super stoked on this fight. That's all I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking about what's after, whatever, because people are like, "Oh, you think you'll get a title shot?" I'm like, no. To be honest with you, I don't think so. I think it's going to take a while. They're like, "Well, what do you think is going to happen after?" I was like, "I don't know. We'll figure it out." I want to step in there and just look at Tony and say, "Man, pretend like this is the last day." My last day as a fighter. How will I finish my last day as a fighter? That's the way I want to step in there.
Yeah. When you look at Tony Ferguson, the run he had put together when he became interim champion, and then of course when he, came back and had another run at interim champion, and then obviously come up short against Justin Gaethje, no shame in that. Of course, that was a war. I mean, that was an absolute war, and he almost got Gaethje out of there earlier in the fight. And then he has the fight with Oliveira, which was probably the most puzzling Tony performance. And again, credit to Charles Oliveira for having a great night. Again, give him credit. But it was kind of a weird performance. We just didn't really get to see Tony do much of anything in that fight because he got taken down and it was a weird performance out of him. So obviously we know how great Tony is, but I want to ask you specifically about those two fights. What have you thought of Tony's last couple of fights?
So with his fight with Justin, like you said, it was a war, and tactically, Justin just seemed to step ahead. With Charles, what's interesting is I think it was more Charles's style. When Charles gets a takedown, he's always looking for the finishes with chokes and front chokes like guillotines and Darces and arm triangles. So I think Tony was so afraid of trying to get up, because if he tries to get up your conventional wrestling way, he's going to get caught. He's going to get caught in one of those chokes and probably go to sleep, because Tony's not the kind of guy who would tap probably. So I think the reason why the fight looks so puzzling, as you put it, is because Tony gave so much respect to Charles's jiu-jitsu, and his wrestling, I think, surprised Tony as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We know what kind of a savage Tony is. We've seen it. I mean, he put up a photo, I want to say before the Gaethje fight, where he showed what most of his opponents, look like when they leave the octagon with him. Even the fights, they don't leave looking the same as they walked in. That's just kind of like a Tony Ferguson fight. Now, obviously, you go in, I imagine, to every fight thinking you're going to dominate a guy, you're going to finish him, you're going to go out there, and if it's going to be a decision, it's going to be a 30-26. But we also know the reality is it may not go that way. It may be a war. You've been through those. You had to gut down even with the last fight with knowing how tough Diego was. How do you approach a fight with a guy like a Tony Ferguson where chances are, and again, obviously you'd like to go out there and get a first round submission, but chances are he's gonna put up a great fight, I guess is what I'm getting at.
So I don't know how to put this. Let me put it this way. The earliest memory I have of my dad is I think I got beat up by some kids, and he looked at me and said, "Hey, you get in a fight, you win. I don't care if you have to pick up a rock or a stick, you win." That's the earliest memory I have of my dad. Obviously, terrible advice as a parent. I'm telling all the fathers right now, don't say that to your kid. But the worst part about that is I thought my dad was a genius at that time. I looked at my dad and I said, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I should have just done that. It would have solved all my problems." So there's that part of me. I'm not so worried about the blood. I'm not worried so much about the cuts. I am genuinely excited to step in there and just look to take his head off, and whatever it takes, win. So that's what I'm looking for. I don't care what my face looks like after. I don't care how my body feels after. I just care that I step in there and I get this done.
Absolutely. I don't know how much, like, you tell me, because you're not a trash talk guy, Beneil. We know that. We've done enough interviews at this point to know you're not a guy who ever feels like you need to down talk an opponent to build yourself up. But I'm curious, because Tony has done a couple of interviews leading into this fight. Obviously, I didn't read a bad word said about you, anything like that. Actually said complimentary things towards you, but he was talking about himself, and he said he felt like he got a little too one-dimensional in his approach to fighting. And so he's kind of switched things up a little bit. He's been training with Freddie Roach. So, in your head, you might imagine he's working on his boxing, things like that. But I don't know what do you expect out of Tony in this fight? Because throughout his, up until the Oliveira fight, he had kind of become he kind of been a very, very well-rounded fighter. He'd won a lot of fights, just beating people on the feet. He'd submitted guys. He was, again, he was kind of an anomaly. You couldn't really predict what he was going to do. So when you hear a comment like he became too one-dimensional, which kind of threw me back a little bit, like, what do you think of that?
So I can see that because, sometimes you fall in love with the striking. I know a lot of fighters, especially grapplers, who just fall in love with the striking, and they all of a sudden they're like hitting pads every day, and they're like, "This is what I'm going to do with the fight. This is how I'm going to finish it." Blah 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 blah. And maybe that's what happened with Tony. He enjoyed becoming. He enjoyed just scaring people. Like he would take a punch just to give a punch, and eventually people would break. And I think he kind of fell in love with that. And maybe that's why he became one-dimensional. In some ways, I can say I've been there. There's been times where I was like, man, I really want to show people my striking. But I think I'm a little bit more mature now. I understand that in reality, I'm a grappler first. And obviously, I'm giving away the game plan here, but there's always going to be a takedown in my fight. I don't I don't need to hide anything from anybody. Like, you know what I'm looking to do.
Yeah. Now, with that being said, one of the things you've done so impressively on this win streak you've been on, Beneil, is the ability to put people away. Now, again, credit to Diego for sticking around. Again, we both said what a tough guy he is. And Tony, to his credit, same thing. Very, very tough guy. But what would it say if you're able to go out there and finish Tony Ferguson? You know, considering – even the Gaethje fight. Now, I had no problem with that stoppage. Don't get me wrong, but even that one, like he didn't. He was still on his feet. It was just there was just too much damage done at that point. I think we all agree it was a good stoppage. But what would it mean to you, or what would it mean for your career to be the guy to go out there and finish Tony Ferguson?
I'm not big on like what my career will be or legacy will be. I'm more on. I'm more hyped on the idea of it. I just being able to finish a guy like that, being able to put him away, man. Like, he's literally a zombie. You can't get him out of there. And with the exception of Justin, and I think if you let Tony, he would have finished the fifth round, no problem. With the exception of Justin, no one's really done it. So I'd like to be that guy. I'd like to be the guy who does it, and I know it's going to take something special. I know, for example, a lot of people will hurt Tony, and while chasing him, they'll get destroyed. They'll get busted up. And when I smell blood in this fight, if I want to finish this guy, when I smell blood, I have to be willing to risk everything and go after him, because it seems to me every time someone hurts him, he just turns into a better version of the wild man that he already is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One thing we discussed after your last fight, and you talked about it, and you kind of apologized when you kind of targeted the matchmakers, but you mentioned, the point you were trying to make was you wanted to see some variety in the division. You wanted to see some new guys get some opportunities that, instead of, you fighting the number 8 guy, actually get a chance to fight a top 5 guy. Now, here you are, you're fighting Tony Ferguson, exactly what you wanted. But it is kind of a good time for the lightweight division now, because you got, Chandler and Oliveira fighting for the title, which, kind of came out of left field when you thought Dustin Poirier was probably the natural guy to get a title shot. He took himself out of the running to do the trilogy with Conor, which is fine. But you got, Chandler, one fight in the UFC, you got Oliveira, who, again, on a great win streak, but, not until fairly recently had he been, truly a contender. Khabib is officially retired. We know he's gone. Like, are you kind of enjoying the lightweight division now? Because we are seeing a lot of potential change here.
I'm enjoying it, and I think there's going to be obviously shift in the division a bit. I'm a lot disappointed with Khabib being gone. I think he was such a good champion. I think it would have been great to be able to fight him. Anyways, I'm enjoying the shift in the division. I'm enjoying the new guys coming in, the new blood. And I think there's a lot more guys that are not even in the top 15 that will eventually be here. From what I see, there's a lot of guys that are just very, very good, that they're going to be champions, or they're going to try to be champions. At least not. While I'm here, they're going to try. But when I'm gone, they're going to be champions. There's guys outside the division, I think, that are outside the top 15 that are great. So I'm loving this shift, man. I like the new blood. And the thing with the matchmaking was, it wasn't like I wasn't getting the contract for these guys. I was getting contracts to fight these higher guys, and every time I would sign it, I would be notified, no, it's not happening. So it's been a long journey to the top 5, and you don't get a lot of chances like this. It's more difficult than the lottery.
Yeah. So now, with that being said, I know you said your focus is 100% on Tony Ferguson, but I got to ask, because we got a couple of key lightweight fights coming up, of course, on your card, which, by the way, I love when they book another great, lightweight fight or great, divisional fight when there's a title fight on the line. Now, before I get to that, let me ask you, did the UFC mention to you, like, are you the replacement if something happens for the title fight? Like, did they say just in case, or?
No, nothing like that. Someone was telling me Tony thinks he would be the replacement. He's thinking that. So, like, they haven't mentioned anything to me like that. I think we're there as a backup plan for sure, but I think in reality, it's It's just Chandler and Charles. They don't really have a backup plan set right now. If anything, they might call Justin or they might call somebody else.
So now, with that being said, let me ask your opinion. Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira. You were a guy who was going to fight Charles Oliveira. We talked about that before. Michael Chandler is kind of the new guy coming in, former Bellator champion. What do you think about that matchup? And if you want to give a prediction, feel free. Do you lean one way or the other?
I've seen a lot more of Charles, obviously, than Chandler, but I've seen Chandler fight as well. And I think Chandler has power. I'm going to lean towards Chandler. He might be able to pull it off, but it's not by much. I'm not leaning that hard. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting fight. I think the longer the fight goes, the better it is for Chandler. That's if it's competitive. If it's not competitive, then obviously it's going to be Charles's fight.
Yeah. And I know that, again, when it's time for you to fight for the title, I'm sure it doesn't matter who it is. You'll fight anybody because that title is what you're after. But I still, at some point, I hope we do get to see that Charles Oliveira fight. You and Chandler would be just as fun as well. So, again, I'm sure it doesn't really matter who wins because as long as they got the belt, you're going to come after them. Yeah,
I'll be going after them. And like I said earlier, I don't think this makes me number one contender. I know it's weird to say, and just because you have a 7-fight win streak, I just don't think it's going to make me number one contender. I think Dustin will be ahead of me still. I think if Conor wants it, even if he loses, he'll be ahead of me. So if Dustin wins, I think he gets the title shot. I think if Conor wins, he gets the title shot. I think Justin Gaethje is still there, So I'm not in a rush. I watched. I always say this. I watched Max Holloway get 10 fights in a row before a title shot. So that's what it takes.
Yeah. So it sounds like obviously in an ideal world, you'd fight for a title, but it sounds like you've kind of wrapped your head around the fact that you might have to beat Tony Ferguson, then you might have to beat Justin Gaethje before you get a title shot. Is that kind of the mindset? Like, you might have to win one more.
Quit saying Justin's name, man.
I willed Tony into existence. I'm just throwing out ideas here, Beneil.
No, listen, you know how Darren Till always jokes about the what's his name, Yoel Romero?
Yeah,
I got that same feeling with Justin. I trained with him for the Tony fight when he fought Tony, and his power is unreal. It's just freakish, and I know eventually we're gonna fight. It's fine, but I'm gonna avoid that guy for as long as possible.
That's hilarious. The other one, if you don't mind me asking real quick, is the Conor and Dustin fight. It's a rematch. It's a trilogy. Again, if you don't mind, what do you think about that matchup?
I'm gonna lean towards Dustin. I thought actually Dustin was gonna win the rematch, their second fight. I just thought he's been in wars over and over and over again. Conor hasn't fought in a while, and Dustin has. I think he has just a natural gas tank. He has that ability to go 5 rounds, and I think Conor can too. It's just he can't do it as efficient as Dustin can. So I'm leaning towards Dustin, and I think I don't think it's going to be a knockout this time. It might be a decision.
Yeah, it's a great matchup, and as I said, I'm with you. I think Khabib, was an incredible champion. You could argue greatest lightweight of all time. I would argue he is the greatest lightweight of all time. But if he's going to be gone, when you look at these couple of fights coming up in the next couple of months, yourself and Tony, Chandler and Oliveira. Conor and Dustin. What a great time for the division. If you're going to move on from a great lightweight like Khabib, it looks like the UFC really went out of their way to make some really fun matchups. And I say this sincerely. I'm glad you got Tony because I know this is the fight I mentioned, but in all reality, I just wanted you to get, a top guy, and you got it. And I'm like, as soon as it got announced, I was like, oh, finally, he gets it.
Yeah, I'm stoked. And like you mentioned, Khabib, I think greatest lightweight of all time, at least so far. I think it was him and Tony. Like they were neck and neck. I think who's the best lightweight of all time, and I think Khabib right now is the guy. So And now I get to fight the guy who was right there as one of the best lightweights of all time. What a time to be in this division. What a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I told you before, I said the reason why I like this matchup is because it's a fight that I just want to see. Like as you mentioned, you're not looking past it. Neither am I, because I'm freaking excited for you and Tony, man. This is the one I wanted. I'm so excited we get to see it. So, Beneil, thank you as always for taking the time. Obviously, have safe training the rest of the way. Safe travels out to the fight. Actually, going to be fans in attendance for this one.
Yeah, how cool is that? My last fight before the fans went away was my comeback fight of the year, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Beneil, thank you as always for taking the time. Have a great rest of your training camp. Safe travels down to Houston. Cannot wait to see you back in action, man. Best of luck.
Take care, brother.